What if Mace Windu attacked Palpatine through a hologram? What would have happened then? We pick up with Anakin telling Mace Windu that Palpatine is the Sith Lord. Let's begin. The amber glow of Coruscant's setting sun painted the Jedi Temple hangar in burned hues. Master Windu and 3 fellow council members made final preparations to board the waiting gunship. The rhythmic echo of hurried footsteps disrupted the pre-mission atmosphere. Anakin Skywalker burst into the hangar, his face a portrait of barely contained urgency. He approached Mace Windu with such intensity that the Master paused his preparations. The young Jedi conveyed his shocking discovery in low, urgent tones. Chancellor Palpatine was the Sith Lord they had hunted for years. Skywalker explained that Palpatine himself had revealed his true nature, demonstrating knowledge of the dark side that confirmed his identity as their elusive enemy. The 4 Masters absorbed this revelation with the disciplined calm of their order. Mace questioned Anakin further, extracting the details of how this revelation had occurred. Satisfied with what he heard, Mace ordered Skywalker to wait in the council chamber until their return, a command delivered with such finality that Anakin, despite visible reluctance, had no choice but to comply. As Anakin's retreating form disappeared from the hangar, the 4 Jedi Masters convened in a tight circle. "Are you certain of Skywalker's information?" Saesatine inquired quietly. "Skywalker said so. I trust him," Mace replied. "What's our approach then?" Kit Fisto asked. Agent Kohler straightened his posture. "We enter his office, demand his surrender, arrest him formally, and bring him to justice through proper channels." The 3 other Masters stared at him. "He has control of the Senate and the courts," Mace said, turning toward the gunship. "He's too dangerous to be left alive." "So we're going to execute him?" Agent asked. Mace paused, the crimson sunset reflecting in his eyes. "The Force works through us. We are simply following its will." Agent tilted his head. "Then why are we physically going there at all? We could simply activate a holocall on an encrypted frequency to his office and just snap his neck or something." Silence descended upon the group. Kit Fisto's mouth opened slightly. Saesatine blinked. Mace turned slowly toward Ajen, his brow furrowed. "What did you say?" "A holocall," Ajen repeated, gesturing vaguely with his hands. "Establish the connection, confirm it's him, and then use the Force to eliminate the threat. From here. Safely." The Masters exchanged looks of dawning comprehension. "That's..." Mace began, then stopped. "Actually, that makes perfect sense." Kit Fisto nodded enthusiastically. "We'd avoid the potential for civilian casualties, and eliminate any advantage his knowledge of the environment might provide." The 4 Jedi Masters moved away from the center of the hangar, finding a secluded corner behind a stack of supply crates where they wouldn't be observed. The evening shadows provided additional cover as they huddled together. "A concentrated Force attack to snap his neck should be sufficient," Mace said. "One synchronized effort will ensure there's no opportunity for him to counter." He paused, his expression hardening. "The Sith must be eliminated. The galaxy depends on it." The 3 other Masters exchanged looks, then nodded in somber agreement. Mace placed the comm device on the floor between them. His fingers glided across the controls with effortless familiarity as he configured the unit for one-way encrypted transmission. He deliberately engaged the privacy protocols, activating the audio and visual dampening fields with a methodical sequence of command inputs. The indicator lights shifted from green to amber, confirming that all outgoing sensory data had been successfully muted. The military-grade encryption would prevent any trace back to their location, while the modified settings ensured Palpatine would receive nothing from their end: no faces, no voices, no background noise. The Chancellor would perceive only blank space on his receiver, while the Jedi would maintain full visual confirmation of his holographic presence, the precise asymmetry they required for their operation. They arranged themselves in a circle, each Master standing with hands slightly extended, ready to channel the Force in unison. Mace activated the device, selecting the encrypted frequency reserved for direct communication with the Chancellor. Moments stretched into a small eternity as they waited. The comm device hummed softly. Kit's tentacles twitched. Agent's breathing slowed to near imperceptibility. Stacey's hands hovered, perfectly steady. Then, a flicker of blue light. Chancellor Palpatine's holographic form materialized above the device. He stood in his office, mouth opening to speak, but the Jedi gave him no opportunity to utter a single word. As one entity, the 4 Jedi Masters thrust their hands forward, channeling the Force with unified purpose. Their combined power surged through the connection, manifesting physically at the other end of the transmission. Palpatine's neck twisted violently, far beyond natural limits. The unexpected intensity of their combined assault caused his head to rotate completely. Once, twice, 3 times, and continuing through a sickening 10 full rotations, before separating entirely from his body. The hologram displayed the gruesome aftermath. Arterial blood erupted in pulsating jets from the severed carotid arteries, spraying in violent arcs across his ornate office furniture. The head spun with such velocity that it careened beyond the hologram's field of view, disappearing from their sight entirely. The chancellor's headless form collapsed to the floor, surrounded by an expanding pool of crimson that reflected the ambient light of his chamber. No scream accompanied his demise. The silence confirmed their suspicion. He had indeed been alone. In that same instant, the Jedi felt a disturbance unlike anything they'd experienced, as though a suffocating veil had been lifted from the Force itself. The shadow that had clouded their perceptions for years evaporated, replaced by a clarity so sudden it left them momentarily disoriented. A distant cry seemed to reverberate through the Force, the death wail of ancient darkness. Mace deactivated the comm with a quick motion of his finger. The hologram vanished, leaving the four masters standing in silence. "So," Kit Fisto finally ventured, his voice oddly subdued. "That's it?" Mace looked around, as though expecting some additional consequence or manifestation. The hangar remained unchanged. Utility droids continued their maintenance routines. The distant hum of Coruscant traffic filtered through the open bay doors, and the sunset continued its gradual descent. "I suppose so," Mace replied, his tone containing a note of disbelief. They remained standing, exchanging uncertain looks. "I expected," Agent began, then faltered. "Something more theatrical?" Stacey completed the thought. "It feels rather..." Kit searched for the appropriate word. "Anticlimactic," Mace concluded, surveying the perfectly ordinary hangar bay. News of Chancellor Palpatine's death reached the HoloNet within 30 minutes of its discovery. The carefully managed information channels of Coruscant erupted, with updates so frequent they interrupted standard programming across all sectors. Within the first hour, the feeds transformed from factual reporting to an exhibition of public mourning that bore all the hallmarks of algorithmic exploitation. HoloNet commentators who specialized in Senate affairs raced to publish the first tribute compilations. They pieced together fragments of Palpatine's most stirring addresses, their editing software straining under the demands of rapid production. One particularly viral creation paired the Chancellor's speech on Republic unity with Crystalline Hearts, a controversial ballad about spice addiction set to a hypnotic Nar Shaddaa club rhythm. The commentators had selected the track purely because it was trending across the mid-rim entertainment feeds. The engagement algorithms favored content that incorporated popular audio tags, regardless of contextual appropriateness. The audio mixing displayed such fundamental incompetence that the music completely overwhelmed Palpatine's rhetoric. His calls for civic responsibility vanished beneath pulsing beats and breathy vocals that had dominated clubs from Coruscant to the Outer Rim. The engagement metrics rewarded speed over substance. Within 2 hours, channels without any political focus began producing memorial content. Galactic Opportunities, a real estate consortium banned from Inner Rim trading after multiple fraud investigations, published a 10-minute montage of Palpatine addressing economic forums. Their description contained 14 separate hyperlinks to investment packages in Chancellor-endorsed developments, despite having no connection to Palpatine's policies. Transmit a holo reaction for respect, register your comm frequency for more market analysis, concluded their solemn tribute, the presenter's affected grief disappearing the moment he believed the recording had ended. Meanwhile, the Senate convened an emergency session that produced more performative noise than substantive action. Representatives who had privately criticized Palpatine's policies now delivered passionate eulogies, their voices reaching unnecessary volume as they competed for attention from news droids. The chamber's acoustic design, normally sufficient to handle orderly debate, struggled to compensate for the theatrical wailing that echoed from multiple sectors. A Rhodian senator from the mid-rim pounded his podium with such theatrical force that it activated the emergency stabilization system. 2 representatives from mining consortiums engaged in competitive grieving, each attempting to outdo the other's expressions of devastation. A banking clan delegate who had opposed Palpatine's financial reforms now claimed to have considered him a personal mentor and irreplaceable visionary. Palpatine's inner circle projected calculated sorrow throughout the Senate chamber, though their performances varied in convincingness. Sly Moore, attempting to mimic human grief, contorted her pale features into an expression that bore no resemblance to any recognizable emotion. The cameras captured her bizarre grimace, lips pursed asymmetrically, eyes widened at incongruous angles, a facial arrangement that would hibernate in archival footage for years before its resurrection. During a future Palpatine Memorial Day broadcast, a bored university student would extract those 7 seconds of footage, pairing it with unrelated economic commentary. The resulting clip would propagate through communication networks, becoming the standard response to political insincerity across multiple sectors. Mace Windu fared little better. His performative size synchronized suspiciously with the rotation patterns of recording droids. Across the chamber, in the diplomatic pod of Naboo, Senator Padme Amidala maintained the outward composure expected following the death of their most prominent political figure. The pod's curved interior accommodated not only Padme but also Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, who had joined her in a gesture of political solidarity. Jar Jar Binks occupied the rear seat, his gangly form slumped against the padded backrest, head tilted at an awkward angle, as gentle snores occasionally escaped his bill. During a procedural vote on the formation of an investigative committee, Padme's eyes accidentally met Mon Mothma's beside her. Something in Mon's carefully controlled expression, a nearly imperceptible tightening at the corner of her mouth, triggered a response Padme couldn't suppress. She quickly covered her entire face with both hands, her datapad pressing against her forehead as the first tremors of inappropriate laughter threatened to escape. Mon Mothma followed suit, slumping forward until her head rested against the edge of the pod's console, hands clasped over her auburn hair in what appeared to be a gesture of overwhelming emotion. Only those within their immediate vicinity could detect the subtle shaking of her shoulders and the muffled sounds of restrained laughter. Behind Padme, her handmaidens exchanged glances of growing disapproval. Dorme's eyes narrowed as she observed her mistress's barely contained amusement, while L.A. subtly cleared her throat in a vain attempt to restore decorum. The handmaidens' training had prepared them for many contingencies, but managing a senator struggling with inappropriate laughter during a galactic crisis hadn't been among the scenarios. Bail Organa, noticing their collective struggle, rose slightly from his seat with apparent concern. He positioned himself as a barrier between their pod and the nearest recording devices. Senator Amidala appears overcome with emotion, he announced with sufficient volume to satisfy journalistic requirements. Then, in a whisper, "If you don't stop laughing, I'm going to start, and then we'll all be executed for treason." This only intensified Padme's battle for composure. Her shoulders quaked visibly beneath her senatorial robes, a motion observers interpreted as grief. Bail raised a hand to his eyes, creating the perfect image of a dignified politician fighting back tears, though the moisture gathering was from the strain of containing his own amusement. Only one individual within the Senate complex experienced genuine despair. Anakin Skywalker paced the administrative corridors outside the chamber, denied entry by security protocols that limited access during emergency sessions. His agitation increased with each passing minute as the implications of Palpatine's death calcified in his consciousness. While the Senate processed political consequences and the HoloNet exploited emotional responses, the Jedi conducted their investigation with unprecedented efficiency. Masters Windu, Fisto, Kolar, and Teen arrived at the Chancellor's office alongside Commander Fox and a detachment of Coruscant Guard. They surveyed the scene they themselves had created with expressions of appropriate shock and methodical professionalism. The Chancellor's office presented a grotesque tableau that defied conventional crime scene categorization. Palpatine's headless body lay supine on the imported carpet, arms outstretched, torso aligned with his desk as though he had collapsed mid-stride. Several meters away, his severed head rested on its side, face turned toward the entrance, eyes frozen in an expression of surprised recognition. The positioning appeared almost deliberately theatrical, as though some unseen curator had arranged the components for maximum visual impact. Blood spray decorated the walls and furniture in a radial pattern, transforming the dignified office into something resembling an exhibition from Coruscant's underground art district, the kind that routinely triggered funding investigations and moral outrage among the more conservative Senate committees. It bore an uncanny resemblance to the controversial, authority-dismantled installation that had prompted student protests at the Coruscant Institute of Fine Arts last season. "Most disturbing," Mace Windu observed as he entered the scene, noting how Palpatine's vacant eyes seemed to follow his movement across the room. "Sir," a tech specialist approached Commander Fox. "We've secured the security recordings, but they're under triple encryption protocols. Senate Security Council authorization required for the access codes." "Timeline?" Fox asked. "Decryption will be instantaneous once we have the codes. Getting the Security Council's authorization could take a few hours, sir." "Understood. Notify me immediately when it's available," Fox replied. As the conversation concluded, Commander Fox and his Coruscant Guard troopers began securing the perimeter of the crime scene. At the same time, CSF investigator Dexter conducted his methodical assessment, crouching beside the severed head. Dexter adjusted the settings on his scanning equipment, his expression professionally neutral despite the grotesque nature of the scene. He methodically circled the head, capturing data from multiple angles, before moving to examine the blood spray patterns. The Chancellor was standing here, he explained, rising to position himself where the blood concentration appeared heaviest, answering a communication call, most probably. Then something, or someone, applied torque to his cranium with extraordinary precision. Dexter gestured with his hands, mimicking a twisting motion. The head rotated approximately 10 complete revolutions before detachment occurred, he continued. Dexter then swept his hand dramatically across the room in a swooping arc, pointing to where Palpatine's severed head now rested. Based on tissue examination, I'd estimate a continuous application of force without interruption. While attention focused on Dexter's explanation, Kit Fisto subtly removed a small device from his utility pouch. When the others moved toward the communication console, he dropped the object behind a decorative vase, a separatist code cylinder that would divert the investigation toward predetermined conclusions. Kit had selected this precise location earlier during his initial sweep of the office, noting the convenient surveillance blind spot created by the ornate ceiling fixtures and architectural columns, a security flaw invisible to casual observation but evident to his Jedi spatial awareness. Commander Fox examined the security logs. No entries or exits recorded during the estimated time of death. The security system shows no malfunctions or tampering, Fox told all those gathered. So we're looking for what, exactly? A teleporting invisible assassin who can somehow bypass the most sophisticated security system in the Republic? One of the junior investigators asked. Dexter looked up from his instruments. Or perhaps the Chancellor simply rotated his own head 10 times until it detached. An innovative approach to retirement, wouldn't you say? The assembled officials fell silent, several shifting uncomfortably at the investigator's dry observation. Kit Fisto let out a genuine laugh, its sound incongruous in the grim setting. Commander Fox turned to the communications technician. Do we know who the Chancellor was speaking with when this occurred? The technician shook her head. Impossible to determine, sir. The last transmission and many others on his personal comm channel are fully encrypted. We can't identify the source. At that precise moment, a junior investigator called out from behind an ornate vase. Commander, I found something. He held up a small, cylindrical device. Its markings distinctly non-Republic in design. The room's attention shifted instantly. Investigators, security personnel, and the Jedi Masters converged on the discovery, surrounding the young officer as though he'd unearthed ancient treasure. Mace Windu stepped forward, examining the device with calculated interest. A separatist code cylinder, Mace announced, his voice carrying through the office. He turned to Commander Fox. Prepare your report on the separatist intrusion. The evidence is conclusive. Yes, sir, Fox replied without hesitation, already activating his datapad to document the findings. A medical team entered with a transport stretcher. They placed both the Chancellor's body and severed head on a single stretcher, the head positioned at what would have been its natural location. The team lifted the stretcher and began moving toward the exit when the head suddenly rolled off, bouncing across the polished floor with a series of wet thuds. Everyone in the room flinched instinctively, even the Jedi Masters. The medical technicians, startled by the collective reaction, lost their grip on the stretcher. It tilted sideways, spilling Palpatine's headless body onto the floor with an undignified thump. A collective gasp echoed through the office. An uncomfortable silence followed before Mace cleared his throat. Perhaps separate transports would be more appropriate for the Chancellor's remains. The medical team nodded, visibly relieved. One group secured the Chancellor's body on the repositioned stretcher, while another carefully contained the head in a separate preservation field. As they supervised the removal of evidence, Mace moved to the Chancellor's panoramic viewport. The city planet continued its endless cycle of activity, oblivious to how fundamentally its political ecosystem had changed. Traffic patterns remained unaltered. Commercial districts maintained standard illumination. The Republic endures, Mace stated, more to himself than his colleagues. Days later, Luke and Leia were born without complication. Anakin's nightmares of Padme's death never materialized. The only danger Padme faced was nearly dying from laughter when, days after Palpatine's demise, security footage from his office leaked to the public. The recording captured the Chancellor alone at his desk when his head suddenly began spinning violently, until it detached from his body. An anonymous HoloNet user called Amethyst Republic Peacekeeper 01 synchronized the gruesome spectacle with the song Right Round by Flo Rida. The music's chorus, "You spin my head right round," played precisely as Palpatine's head rotated 10 times before separating from his body. creating a macabre synchronization that spread across the HoloNet instantly. Padme first viewed this edited video during a private Senate committee meeting alongside Bail Organa and Mon Mothma. The entire room erupted in inappropriate laughter, with several senators having to excuse themselves. Throughout the galaxy, what began as solemn mourning transformed into collective amusement as the video reached every corner of the Republic. Even the most dignified political circles couldn't maintain decorum when discussing the late chancellor. The juxtaposition of the pompous Palpatine's deadly fate with such frivolous music became the galaxy's most shared joke, with Padme and her senatorial friends often dissolving into fits of giggles whenever someone made the slightest reference to it. Republic investigators, under guidance from the Jedi Council, examined the footage meticulously. They publicly concluded that a sophisticated Techno-Union cloaking mechanism must have concealed assassination droids during the attack. The announcement triggered a catastrophic crash in Techno-Union stock values across galactic markets. While security teams hunted for non-existent droids, the case eventually went cold. Master Yoda began preparations for transitioning the Jedi Order into Jedi Order LLC, with Yoda assuming the position of CEO and council members serving as the board of directors.